So we're going to make use of trackers in our demo here. So this is the UI for tracker management on the Symbol platform. And so I just kind of wanted to show the specific tracker that we're going to utilize in the demo. So if we, here's, you can see a list of all the trackers that I have created or otherwise provided by default. The tracker that I'm going to use is this travel tracker right here. And if we actually go and open this tracker up, this travel tracker is very simple. It's basically going to key off anything travel related. And there are keywords like travel, vacation, visit, flight, cruise, personal time off, all that fun stuff. So we're going to utilize this tracker in this demo. Going to switch to a console here. I have 3 tabs open for this console. The first one we're going to do is we're going to create and launch that Symbol data miner component. So this is the component that's responsible for proxying the microphone input from the client or this mock CLI utility, and it's going to proxy that microphone input to the Symbol backend platform. And so if I go ahead and I run and start this component up, it's basically going to sit there and listen for new WebSocket connections from clients that are going to connect to it. And that in turn will proxy those WebSocket connections to the Symbol platform. The next component I'm going to start up is that middleware component, and it's called example your middleware. So this is the component that you would want to either create on your own or modify the reference implementation that's here. There is a default implementation that's provided. It does very simple things. We will enhance this as we move forward, but for right now I'm just going to run this reference middleware implementation that's contained within the repo. What this middleware does is it's going to process conversation insights that get sent from the Symbol platform to that proxy service. It's going to persist those conversation insights, specifically that travel tracker that we're really interested in. It's going to persist that into the Neo4j database, and it's going to fire off a copy using RabbitMQ to this middleware component. And what this middleware component is going to do, it's going to provide conversations with who have triggered this travel tracker in previous conversations. And so effectively what we want to do is we want to show who's talking about traveling in other conversations in this example, in this demo. And from there, based on what we want to do is we want to show past conversations using travel, we're going to send a very specific application level message that is not that tracker message. It's a higher level message, and we're going to send that back to the UI to display. So right now we have our data miner component running, and then we also have our middleware component running. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a client. So simulate a web UI, and we're just going to do this using a mock CLI because it's fairly easy to do, and it's pretty interesting to show you what's going on. So we're going to start this mock CLI, and as soon as I hit this, it's going to open up a WebSocket to the data miner component. The data miner component is going to proxy that to this to the Symbol platform, and conversation insights are going to flow, get recorded, and then we'll go from there, and we'll take a look at the output from all of these components. And I'm just going to do a very, very simple demo, which just demonstrates this capability end to end. So it's going to be very simple and quick. I would like to travel to Europe. So I've terminated this conversation, this session. It was very simple. It was a 1-sentence conversation. Normally, this wouldn't be a typical conversation, but I just wanted to show the capabilities of what this enterprise reference implementation can do. So if we take a look at the output for this conversation in this data miner component, we can see that we have a conversation start message. And in the Next thing that happened was it was just that one sentence in this conversation, which you can see here is I would like to travel to Europe. That one sentence invoked travel tracker that I had already showed you previously, and the keyword travel was recognized, and so a tracker or insight was invoked because of this, and it was saying, hey, we saw in this sentence that the travel tracker was relevant to this sentence. And we also happen to see an entity response message because Europe happens to be an entity, and so we recognize that as a location. And we closed the conversation because it was very simple. Because we're forwarding those exact same messages to the middleware component so that it can decide what these conversation insights are happening currently in this current conversation, if there's any relevance to previous conversations. And in this case, there isn't. And the reason why is because this happens to be the very, very first conversation that we're entering into the database. If we go ahead and we look at, we can see that there's a single conversation that had taken place, which is the one that I had created. The message based on this conversation was pretty simple, right? Here's the conversation, and then the message that was said, which is I would like to travel to Europe, which you can see on the right-hand side here. And it also had invoked the tracker insight, which is basically, hey, the travel tracker was triggered and recognized, and so we're sending that. So if we go back to our demo here, and we start up a new client, and by starting up a new client, we're inherently saying, hey, we're starting a new conversation, and we're going to do something very simple, and I'm going to say I would like to travel somewhere else. And the whole idea of this is basically to be able to aggregate conversation, being able to take insights that happen in one conversation and relate them to a different one. And so that's what we're going to do right now. And this is the whole crux of the demo here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. It should be fairly simple. And I will look at the output after I close the conversation. So I'm going to run a new client, and here we go. I would like to travel to Long Beach. So I just closed off my client mock CLI, which is a representation of what a UI is, and we see something very different here this time. And what we see here is we have an application specific message that got generated based on what I said in this conversation and how it got related to a previous conversation. So if we look at what actually happened here is I opened a new conversation and I said, I would like to travel to Long Beach. The data miner component, right? We received a new conversation create message here. We got a new sentence, which was detected by the symbol platform. It says, I would like to travel to Long Beach. Because it used the word travel, it also invoked the tracker response, saying, I identify this message as being relevant to the travel tracker. Because I said the word Long Beach, it also has an entity associated with it, which is not relevant to the demo, but it still recorded that anyways. And I stopped the client, and we have this teardown of the conversation. And if we look at this middleware component now, you're going to get a copy of all of these messages. You know, the conversation created, I would like to travel to Long Beach, tracker message that gets triggered, and then the entity handler, and then the conversation teardown. So it's receiving all of these messages. Now, what's very interesting here is in this middleware component, when it received this tracker handler, this example middleware component, it took this tracker and it said, hey, I would like to see if any other conversations triggered this travel tracker. And if it did, I would like to send a message back to the UI showing that this particular conversation related to the tracker in this way. And so it sent this application specific message back through the data miner, and then to the UI component here, which is this mock CLI. And so what it did was it related what I had said in this current conversation. I would like to travel to Long Beach. A previous conversation also had triggered this travel tracker was I would like to travel to Europe. And so this is the association that was made between these two trackers in two separate conversations. So this is a very, very high level, very simple example of how you can aggregate conversation based on very specific things that you want to do. And just to kind of highlight some things that other things you can do, I'm going to copy this query and I'm going to drop it into the Neo4j here. And I'm going to replace the conversation ID in this query with the conversation that had just taken place here. And if I execute this query, this is how in the back end, in this middleware component, it decided that there was another conversation that triggered this travel tracker, and it used this query to find out where in the past this tracker was triggered. And so you can see that in this query here, which is very cool, and it's demonstrates this visually. You can see the travel tracker getting triggered based on this message. I would like to travel to Europe, said by this particular individual, which was configured in the UI. So yeah, that's basically this demo. I hope you find the demo interesting. And the idea is to take these insights over conversations and aggregate them to do much cooler and way more interesting and important things. So, yep, thanks for watching.